I should probably be embarrassed to say this, but I have over 100 books on my physical TBR. So in this video, I'm gonna take you through 25 books on my physical TBR that I have to read in 2025 because we gotta cut that number down. That is embarrassing. Okay, I have 25 books in front of me. We are gonna break this down into categories. The biggest one is fantasy, so let's start there. First up, House of Flame and Shadow by Sarah J. Maas. This is the third book in the Crescent City series. I went on a crazy binge of Throne of Glass and Crescent City last year. It was like the end of 2023 into 2024. I was trying to read everything before this book came out. I didn't quite make it, and so by the time I hit this book, I was fantasied out. I was done with this world, and I have been too scared to pick it up since then. So this is on the top of my list. It's really, really long. I don't know when I'm gonna fit this in. I think I need to just start it because I have been putting it off for way too long. And I need to complete my Sarah J. Maas journey. I cannot believe I still haven't done that. So there you go. Next up, we have the Zodiac Academy. I have heard amazing things about this series. I think I would really like it. It's a very spicy, like college type fantasy where I believe your powers are based on your zodiac sign. I'm really into astrology. I love romantasy. The people who have recommended this to me, I trust, and I know I'm gonna like it, but this series is so long. I think there's like 9 or probably 12 books actually if it's based on the zodiac. Are there 12 zodiac signs? I don't know. There's a lot of books in this. I think this is also on Kindle Unlimited. Yeah, these are also on Kindle Unlimited, and there is a bunch of books. Too many to count. So next up we have the Song of Achilles. I'm not sure if this is considered fantasy. It's like Greek mythology based fantasy. This is supposed to be really heart-wrenching, really deep, and it feels like a very mature fantasy. Like it's romantasy, but it's not something like Zodiac Academy where it's like college fun vibes. It follows Achilles and Patroclus. Achilles is very swift and beautiful and strong and fast, and Patroclus is like an awkward young prince who was exiled from his homeland. So together they have to go and save Helen of Sparta when she was kidnapped. And I think this is a love story between Achilles and Patroclus. So it's like an LGBTQ plus friendly book, which A, I've been wanting to read more of those. B, it's a fantasy with no sequel, I'm pretty sure, which is nice and hard to come by because normally fantasy series are so long. This has been on my TBR for so long. It's very high up on my list. Okay, I can't believe that I still have not read this series yet, you guys. It's Shatter Me by Tahira Mafi. This is a dystopian YA series. A lot of people really, really love it. I'm nervous for it because I don't always love YA, and I just feel, especially with like a fantasy or dystopian world, YA sometimes doesn't translate fully. But of course, when I was younger, I loved Hunger Games and Twilight, so I'm hoping that I'll like this one. It's about a girl named Juliet whose touch is fatal, and so the bad guys, I think the reestablishment it says, have plans for her to use her as a weapon, but she doesn't want that, so it kind of follows Juliet's story. Please comment and let me know if I really need to bump this up my TBR. It's really long. I feel like I'd be able to fly through this. The text is really big and the margins are really big. It's like 300 something pages, but there are 6 books plus a collection of novellas, so we'll see. Next up we have The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. If you were on the same side of book talk that I am, this has been so popular recently. I feel like multiple big book talkers have been reading this at the same time, and so everyone that I've seen is talking about it. One of my good friends, Shirley, has recommended this book to me so many times, and I've had it on my shelf forever. I believe it's a trilogy, so not a huge commitment when it comes to fantasy, but I've heard it's like heart-wrenching. Everyone is literally like, R.F. Kuang, you need to pay for my therapy, girl. Okay. Hi, Jora. What's on your... Oh, did you just burp? What's on your TBR? Jora says hello. Okay, goodbye. Don't drink my matcha, thank you. This book is about a girl who grew up in poverty. She's teased by a lot of her classmates for her color, her poverty, her gender, and then she finds out that the gods that they all thought were dead are alive, and she has this like secret power. And so of course she now has to kind of like help save the world, I guess. I think that they go to like a college or something in this as well, like a school, but this sounds really good. I'm just afraid that it will emotionally wreck me, but we'll see. One Dark Window. I am so excited about this. This is a duology fantasy, and I believe a lot of it is based on tarot cards, which I love. I grew up doing tarot with my mom, so I'm really into that kind of world. It's about a girl and her monster called Nightmare, and he's basically like her cloud that lives in her head and protects her in this like scary kingdom that she lives in. I don't know much beyond that. I feel like the back of this is very vague. It says a maiden must unleash the monster within to save her kingdom in this dark, lush, gothic fantasy debut. The second one is called Two Twisted Crowns. A lot of people seem to like this one, but like the second one even better. I'm looking through and I'm seeing like little cards in here. Sounds fun. We have another YA fantasy series on the list. This is Caraval. Again, I'm nervous about the YA, but I think this will be something that I'm able to read through quickly. And I want to get to the Once Upon a Broken Heart series, which I believe you have to read after you read Caraval. And this sounds really interesting. It's another like deadly game situation, but it's based on carnival games where a girl has to go and save her sister. Her and her sister have always dreamed of seeing Caraval, which is like a once in a lifetime performance, and the audience participates in the show. But this time her sister gets stolen away, and so she has to go and help and save her. I've heard rave reviews about this as well, but I'm worried that it's because people read it when they were younger and it's more of a nostalgia thing, kind of like Shatter Me. So we shall see about this one, but the premise of it sounds really exciting. The Cruel Prince. This has also been on my shelf for so long. I feel like this is one of the OG Book Talk fantasy books. I've heard mixed reviews. I think this is more fantasy and less romance, if I'm not mistaken. But a lot of people really like Jude. That's the main character in this book. And I think that the main guy is supposed to be really like super fly. Basically, it's about a girl, a human girl, who was stolen up to the high court of the fairies, and now she's kind of finding out, now that she's older, that a lot of the fae don't like humans. So it's like human girl in a fairy world situation. I'm a human girl in a fairy world. Why is that like the theme of every single fantasy book? I don't know anything about this book. Let's see what the pages look like. Normal sized pages, normal sized writing. I feel like I have to just go into this one blind. Okay, we've got The Fall of Ruin and Wrath by Jennifer L. Armentrout. I think this is a standalone fantasy. I opened this in a blind date with a book on my TikTok that went super viral, and so many people said they loved this book. I've heard that it's a very, very, very spicy romantasy. I have not a clue what it's about. The back just says, she lives by her intuition, he feeds on her pleasure. So if you're looking for a spicy fantasy rec, this might be for you. A lot of people said they really love her writing. And since I read The Veiled Kingdom, I haven't read a very super spicy fantasy book, which I feel like could be hit or miss. But the cover of this one is really pretty. Very nice hardcover, so could be down. And last in my fantasy pile, I have The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. I think this is more of a casual fantasy. It's not like fae and demons and crazy kingdoms. This is about a girl from the 1700s in France who makes a deal where she becomes immortal, but the caveat is that no one can ever remember who she is. So I think like if you're talking to someone, they'll know you until you go away and then nobody ever remembers you. But it says it will be 300 years before she stumbles into a hidden bookstore and discovers someone who can remember her name, and suddenly everything changes. I have been dying to read something from V.E. Schwab. I've heard nothing but amazing things about their writing, but this book itself, I've heard mixed reviews. This seems good if I want fantasy, but not like full fantasy world, if you know what I mean. Next up, we are moving on to romance. Okay, calling all my Emily Henry girlies. I only read Beach Read. That is the only Emily Henry book I've read so far, and I didn't love it. I didn't hate it. I think I give it a 3, but I definitely didn't love it. I don't know if her writing is for me. I don't know if it was just the story, if it was the characters, if it was the writing, but I want to give her another chance to see if I like her writing. And I've had Beach Read on my shelf for a while. This book sounds really fun. It's about 2 friends or neighbors. The guy is named Augustus, the girl is named January. Interesting names. And they're in a beach town together. Augustus writes like really sulky fiction thriller books, and January writes romance. They're both having writer's block, so they decide to swap books, and she writes his book and he writes her book. So they have to go on all these adventures to like teach each other how to write the other person's genre. It sounds really cute and fun and lighthearted. This would be a great summer read, but again, I don't know if Emily does it for me. And I feel like that is not a popular opinion. So I do have a couple other Emily Henry books on my shelf, so let me know if I should try swapping this out with one of those. What was your favorite book by her? Please comment and let me know that. Okay, next up we have Archer's Voice. This has been on my shelf almost since I started reading. I think this is one of the first books I ever really picked up. I believe it's YA, so I'm a little nervous, but I've heard this book is really, 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 really sad. So I feel like this is gonna be a nice, you know, depression rainy day read. It's about a girl in a small town, and she meets this guy named Archer who doesn't communicate with anyone. I think he really doesn't speak to anyone. And there's a lot of secrets and betrayal and passion, and I'm just worried that it's gonna break my heart. I don't know anything about it, but People really cry when they read this, so. Okay, we have another book from a blind date with a book that I opened called Still Beating by Jennifer Hartman. The dark romance girlies were in my comments when I opened this and said this book is amazing, but I am not a dark romance fan. I've only ever really read like a couple of dark romances, and I don't think they were even that dark. I can't think of them off the top of my head, but I don't know if I'm a dark romance girl. But this one actually sounds really interesting. It's about a girl who's at her sister's birthday party and she ends up getting kidnapped, and she's not the only one who gets kidnapped. Her sister's fiance also does, and they do not like each other, her and the sister's fiance. But now they're trapped together and have to figure out how they can get out of this. So I think it's like an enemies to lovers situation, but I'm like, enemies to lovers with your sister's fiance? I guess that's where the dark part comes in and the kidnapping, but it sounds kind of fun and thrilling. Could be down. And I think it's also really spicy. This is the year that I continue a lot of series that I never finished. I read Binding 13 and Keeping 13 last year and loved them, but for some reason I've been hesitant to jump into Joey's book. So I have Saving Six on the list, of course. I don't know what it is. I feel like the first two books were so sad and heavy that I was reluctant to jump into the next ones. These books are also pretty long, but I ate the first two up. And I don't know, I just don't know if I love Joey's character that much, but I feel like I have to get back into this world. Chloe Walsh writes just the most amazing characters. You really feel like you know these people, and I've kind of been missing them. I've been missing this family. Well, not the whole family, obviously, but I miss their little baby brother who says, "My Oni." What's his name again? What's his name again? I don't remember, but he's like, "My Oni." Okay, I had to put this book on my list, Things We Never Got Over, because my friend Mariana, who you guys know, she co-hosts our online book club with me. She has been trying to force me to read this for so long. And again, similar to Archer's Voice, this is, my cat is going crazy. Similar to Archer's Voice, this has been on my shelf pretty much since I started reading at the beginning of 2023. Small town romance, grumpy sunshine, very spicy, very long. I've just heard such mixed reviews, I don't know. But there's also something on the back that says Naomi has an evil twin. So I'm kind of like, evil twin grumpy sunshine? I'll give it a chance. I did get to meet Lucy Score at an event though, and she is so nice and wonderful and funny and cute that I can't believe I haven't read any of her books yet. So if her books are as good as she is in person, I think I'm gonna love this. Abby Jimenez, my girl. In 2024, I read Part of Your World, Yours Truly, and Just for the Summer. Her little trilogy. So I want to finish my whole Abby catalog and get started with The Friend Zone. This is the first of another little 3-book interconnected series. I literally have no idea what it's about. If it's called The Friend Zone, I assume it's like either a fake dating or a friends to lovers situation, but I kind of don't want to know what it's about. I just know that I love Abby, so that's all I'm gonna leave you with. And last up, we have The Pairing by Casey McQuiston. First of all, look at these cute sprayed edges. It says, "Some things taste better together." And the bottom has Paris and the top has Rome. Why is that so cute? I picked up this book for 2 reasons. Number one, I loved Red, White, and Royal Blue, which is her more popular book. Literally so good. And number two, the premise of this sounds so fun. It's about a couple named Theo and Kit. Basically, they were together and then split up, but they had booked this trip to Europe to go food and wine tasting. But because of the breakup, they never went on this like crazy European vacation. So they just took a couple of years not speaking. Theo is a bartender. Kit went to pastry school. And after a while, both of them thought separately that they should go on this trip, and so they both like cashed in their tickets basically and ended up on the same trip together, which they were not planning for, obviously. So now it's the two exes going on this whole sightseeing tour. They're going to France, Spain, and Italy, all which I've been to, all which I loved, and they're like, oh no, of course we're over each other, like this will be fine. But obviously if you're going on a food and wine tasting tour in Europe, you are gonna have some things happen. It sounds really cute, and I'm hoping that I get to go to London this year, so I feel like this will be a really good travel book. Next up, I have some literary fiction and nonfiction. I had to put at least one nonfiction book on this list. This is Everything I Know About Love by Dolly Alderton. I have heard amazing things about this. I believe it's a collection of short stories, but it's just about her different trials and triumphs of living. And I feel like as I'm approaching my 30s, I'm about to turn 30 in April, this will be a good like reflection book. I feel like this will be a good discussion topic one if I try and get my book club to read this. It's about heartbreak, growing up, friends, romance, and it's just supposed to be a funny, cute little memoir. Where the Crawdads Sing. I feel like this is one of these classics, not classics, but classics, you know what I mean? That was so popular so long ago. I see this every single time I go to the thrift store. I have to read it just to be in the know. Like if you're a reader, I feel like you had to have read this book. Plus Taylor Swift wrote a song for the movie. So like, yeah. It's about a girl that they call the Marsh Girl who lives on the Carolina coast, like in the swampland and stuff. She's kind of lives solo, doesn't really have a family. And then someone from the town dies, and so they're all blaming her. I think it's like a murder mystery situation. It sounds really good and interesting, but I've heard this book can be very slow. So I'm interested to see if I can actually get through it or if I'm gonna want to DNF it. But I am trying to be a little bit more lenient with DNFs this year. Last year I read too many books that I didn't want to complete, but I forced myself to anyway. So we'll see. The Ministry of Time. This is an art copy that I never got around to reading, but it sounds so good. If you're a fan of Haley Pham like I am, you know that this is one of her favorite books from last year. So I have been dying to read it ever since I got my hands on it, but it just never made its way up on my TBR. It's basically about a girl who rehabs people into society, but instead of doing it with like someone from a different country or someone who's been in jail for a long time, it's with people from different time periods. So the government has figured out time travel. It's like a magical realism situation. And so she has to rehab and integrate this guy from like the 1700s into society. Obviously, I'm assuming that they fall in love and they have to navigate all of that. Really, really cool and interesting premise. That's all I really know about it. But again, I've heard great things. The House in the Cerulean Sea. This is something that I actually started a few months ago. We read this for my in-person book club, and I think this is the only book from my book club that I never actually completed. I guess I should have probably put this in fantasy because it's about a guy who runs an orphanage for magical creatures, and it's all a bunch of these kooky, quirky little kids, and it's like a very much found family type situation. I feel like it's a very cozy, low stakes fantasy book, but everyone in my book club literally loved this book. It was many of their favorites of the year. And my friend Haley said that I have to read this as her gift to her for her birthday, which is in February. So I will be reading this very soon. I think I got to page 30 when I read it. So I already have like a little bit of a head start. Daisy Jones and the Six. I cannot believe I have never read this book. I feel like everyone and their mother has read this, especially after the show came out, but I've never seen the show. So I do still have motivation to read this. I read Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by her, which I liked, but that was really early into my reading journey. So I don't really feel like I connected with it as much as I could have. But all I know is that this is like 70s era about a girl in a band. So it's a little different than what I normally read, but we'll give it a try. Last but not least, I have 3 thrillers on my list. Number 1 is The Silent Patient. I feel like I have no explanation to give this. I cannot believe I have never read this. This is like one of the first books that people on Book Talk end up reading. I've heard mixed reviews, but I love a good thriller, and I really don't read enough thrillers. This is about a girl named Alicia who has a great life until one day randomly she shoots her husband when he gets home from work, and then when she gets put in jail, she never speaks again, not a word. And so now this guy who's like a psychotherapist is trying to get her to talk about what happened. I know for sure this one's on Kindle Unlimited. Again, how have I not read this yet? As a book talker and a booktuber and a bookstagrammer, I feel like a fraud. We have The Perfect Couple by Ellen Hildebrand. I love this tiny little copy that I found at a thrift store. How cute is this? I have been using this as a prop in my Instagram photos for like 2 years now. So I think it's finally time that I read it and don't just carry it around in my beach bag. Ellen Hildebrand writes all of her stories based on Nantucket, I believe, or at least most of them. So it's about a summer Nantucket wedding where things are going great until the maid of honor randomly is discovered dead on the beach. And this happens just hours before the ceremony. So it's a classic like whodunit murder mystery. And I actually might be going to Nantucket this year, so I feel like this would be a good one to bring. And last but not least, I have Local Woman Missing. This has been highly recommended to me. I've heard that it's like a very, very good plot twist, which is exactly what I look for in a thriller. I never want to know what's going on. I don't want any inkling. It's about a town where 2 people go missing, Shelby and Meredith, and then later her 6-year-old daughter Delilah vanishes, but then 11 years later Delilah shockingly returns. So people are kind of trying to figure out what's going on and what happened. I feel like thrillers are the perfect way to get out of a reading slump, so I'm gonna save this for a rainy day in case I get bored with any of my other books, and hopefully this will shock me back into my reading era, because I did set my Goodreads goal at 60 books for the year. Last year I only got to 48. So I need to pick up the pace a little bit, and I feel like thrillers will help me get there. So there we have it. Those are all the books from my physical TBR that I intend to read in 2025. Please hold me accountable for this. I really am trying to be on a book buying ban. Unless it's something that I read on Kindle and I really liked, I'm allowed to buy my trophy, or with really anticipated new releases like Onyx Storm. Let me know what's on the top of your physical TBR for the year, and make sure to subscribe so you can see my lovely face when I post my next video. That's all I got for you.